We're really plunging into the terrifying reality of deep-sea exploration. We're looking at a history of tragedy, really. We've pulled together a whole stack of sources on some of the most catastrophic submarine and submersible disasters. Right, the focus is on 6 specific incidents. It's a huge span of time, too, from 1927 all the way up to, the OceanGate Titan disaster in 2023. It's nearly a century, and you see everything from naval vessels in wartime to these new civilian submersibles. And our mission here, really, is to find the common threads. Exactly, it's not just about listing failures. We want to pull out the patterns, the technical mistakes that kind of repeat themselves, the human stories, and just the fundamental truth that the deep ocean, it doesn't give you a second chance. There's zero margin for error. None. Yeah. So what you're going to get here is a really distilled understanding of why this is still, maybe, the most dangerous frontier we have. I think you have to set the stage first, though, just to consider the environment itself. I mean, the pressure it's literally crushing, and the isolation is absolute. Yeah, whether you're 100 feet down in the 1920s or, 12,000 feet down today, the line between safety and total disaster can be just milliseconds. Very thin line. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start at the beginning. The USS S4, December 1927, off the coast of Massachusetts, right? Provincetown. This is like the early messy age of submarine. Very messy. And the cause here wasn't a complex failure or an enemy. It was just a collision. A shocking, simple collision. So the S4 is doing routine speed trials. Yep. But the visibility is bad. And on the surface, you have the Coast Guard destroyer Pauling. And what's it doing? Steaming at 18 knots. Remember, this is Prohibition. Yeah. The Pauling is out there actively hunting for rum runners. So it's moving fast and aggressively. And it just plows right into the S4 as it's trying to surface. Tears the hull right open. And it sank immediately, straight down to 100 feet. But here's the thing. The initial impact didn't kill everyone. No, I saw this. 34 of the 40 crew actually survived the sinking itself. They did. But 6 of them were trapped. They were sealed off in the forward torpedo room. And this is where the real agony of the story begins, isn't it? It is. The next morning, Navy divers show up. And you have to picture this. A veteran diver, Thomas Eady, he goes down in that cold, dark water, and he knocks on the hatch. So he raps on the hatch. And our sources confirm he gets a reply. 6 slow, deliberate taps. Wow. They're alive, just feet away, separated by a steel hull and 100 feet of freezing water. They're alive and they're waiting. But then, everything that could go wrong did. Nature, right? And the technology of the time. A brutal nor'easter just descends on the bay. A massive coastal storm. So the ships on the surface are just getting battered. It makes the diving conditions totally impossible. They had air hoses, they had grappling lines, but they couldn't use them. The storm was just too violent. And the 6 men are down there waiting. For how long? For nearly 3 days. Yeah, 3 agonizing days in the cold and the dark. Concerning oxygen, probably hearing the rescue attempts start. And then stop. And then just silence as the storm rages above them. Complete silence. The rescue ships were forced to pull back. By the time they could get back down there, the taps had stopped. It's just a tragedy of helplessness, the slowness of it all. Exactly. And that slow, drawn-out failure is such a stark contrast to our next case, the USS Tang in 1944. Yeah. I mean, this submarine was a legend in World War II. An incredibly successful boat. She was on her final attack patrol in the Taiwan Strait. Had already sunk a huge amount of Japanese shipping. Just an unbelievable record. On that one patrol, she'd fired 22 torpedoes. 21 of them were hits. That's an incredible success rate. Almost unheard of. So they line up for their final shot, number 23, at a big Japanese transport ship. And they fire a Mark 18 electric torpedo. And the Mark 18, this is a key detail from the sources, it was a newer weapon, electric. And it was known to have some issues. What kind of issues? Specifically with keeping its depth. It could be erratic, especially if you fired it at a shallow setting. I am known if, rare flaw. And on this day, that flaw showed up instantly. The torpedo launches, it runs straight for a few seconds. And then it malfunctions. It broaches the surface, just porpoising wildly in the water. Oh no! And then its steering fails. It hooks into a sharp turn. What submariners call a circular run. It's coming back at them. It's coming right back at the tank. They must have seen it. Oh, they saw it. Shouts for emergency speed. Rudder hard over. Yeah, but it's just too fast. 20 seconds after it left the tube, it hits its own submarine. Slams into the stern. The explosion. The flooding. It was catastrophic. Instantaneous. How many survived? Only 9. Out of 87 men, most were just thrown into the water by the blast. It's such a chilling irony. Sunk by its own weapon, a top-performing submarine taken out by a flaw in its own tech, right at the peak of its success. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because we now move into the Cold War. Right, and the stakes just become apocalyptic. We're talking about the Soviet K-219 disaster in 1986. The context here is everything. The K-219 is on patrol, not far from Bermuda, actually, about 680 miles northeast. And this isn't a conventional sub. No, it's carrying 16 nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles. 16! The crisis starts with something almost mundane, right? A leaky seal. Failed seal in missile tube 6, yeah. Seawater starts leaking in, and it reacts with some leftover liquid missile fuel, which causes an explosion. A huge explosion. Kills 3 sailors instantly, fills the compartments with incredibly toxic fumes. But that's not even the main danger. No. The real nightmare is the nuclear reactors. The blast destroyed the automatic shutdown system. And the temperature gauges for both reactors, they just start climbing. They're heading for a meltdown, a full-blown meltdown, off the American coast. And this moment creates one of the most unbelievable stories of individual heroism I think I've ever read. Someone had to go in there manually. Someone had to go into the reactor compartment and manually crank down the control rods to stop the chain reaction. Who went? Lieutenant Nikolai Belikov and a 20-year-old kid, Seaman Sergei Primenin. They volunteered. What were the conditions like in there? The temperature was over 70 degrees Celsius. That's, 158 degrees Fahrenheit. They're dealing with that heat, the fumes, the radiation. Unimaginable. Belikov eventually just collapses from it all. He can't go on. So it's all on Primenin, the 20-year-old, all on him. And he's already exhausted, but he goes back in alone. And he does it. He turns the final crank. He locks down the last control rod. He prevents a catastrophe. He saved them. He saved, potentially, a huge part of the world. He did. But in doing so, the heat created this massive pressure differential between the compartment and the outside, and the hatch. The hatch was jammed shut by the pressure. He couldn't get out. So he's trapped in the room he just saved everyone from. Trapped. The sources say his crewmates were on the other side, desperately trying to pry it open, but the pressure was just too immense. His oxygen ran out. He died right there, meters away from the men he saved. That's just an incredible sacrifice. It's the definition of it. And just 3 years later, another Soviet disaster. 1989, the K-278 Komsomolets. This was the really advanced one, right? That titanium hull, a total marvel for its time. That unique hull let it set a world record dive depth for a military sub. 3,350 feet. Just incredible. But the very tech that let it go so deep was also its downfall. Exactly. The disaster starts at over 1,000 feet down. A high-pressure airline ruptures. Okay. And it sprays lubricating oil directly onto a hot turbine. That's a fire. Not just a fire. The airline that ruptured was feeding it with compressed air at 8,000 pounds per square inch. It was a high-pressure blowtorch inside a sealed tube. Oh, God. They managed to surface, though. The sub was crippled, but they made it to the surface. The captain and a few officers tried to save the boat, but it was a lost cause. So the last 6 men, including the captain, they get into this special escape pod. It's a sphere designed to just shoot them to the surface, and it worked. It launched. It got to the surface, but it had a catastrophic flaw. What happened? When they opened the hatch, the huge pressure difference between the inside of the pod and the outside atmosphere caused it to explosively decompress. So the hatch just blew open with incredible force, killed 2 of them instantly. And the tragedy just kept going on the surface. You had 50 crew members who'd already abandoned ship, just floating in the freezing Norwegian Sea. And the rescue was slow. Agonizingly slow. A civilian fishing boat got there first, but it took over an hour. 34 men died of hypothermia alone. Out of 69 crew, 42 were lost. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it feels like we're seeing a shift. It's not just about the external pressure anymore. It's about how these incredibly complex internal systems fail. You're absolutely right. Which brings us perfectly to the modern era and a totally new kind of risk. 2019, the Russian AS-12 Losharik, another super advanced deep diving vessel, nested titanium spheres, the best of the best. The crew was the absolute elite of the Russian fleet. 7 of them were captains of the first rank. Just incredible experience. But the threat this time wasn't depth or a weapon or even a fire like on the Komsomolets. It was the power source. It was the batteries, specifically newly installed lithium-ion batteries, an electrical short circuit, and lithium-ion batteries in a sealed environment like a sub. That's a nightmare scenario, the unique and lethal hazard. They burn incredibly hot, and they produce a huge amount of toxic fumes. This wasn't a whole breach, it was a chemical fire in a camp, and the crew fought it. The sources say they fought it for over 40 minutes. It got so bad a four-man rescue team actually entered the Losharik from its mothership to help out, and then the battery compartment exploded. 14 men, including the entire rescue team that went in to help, died from the blast and the smoke. So even with the most elite crew imaginable, this new technology introduced a fatal, unstoppable risk. It did. What's fascinating here is just how the danger evolves. We started with this slow, agonizing death on the S4 because of, primitive rescue tech, and we're about to end with an instantaneous death caused by pure technological hubris. The 2023 OceanGate Titan tragedy. The descent to the Titanic, 12,500 feet down. 5 people on board, including the CEO, Stockton Rush. And everyone talks about the video game controller, which is, a bit of a sideshow. It's a distraction. The real issue was the structure, the hull, the pressure vessel itself. It was made mostly of carbon fiber, which is great for playing, fantastic for aerospace. It's light, it's strong, but it behaves very, very differently under the kind of cyclic compression you get in the deep ocean. It's not what it's for. And the sources on this they're crystal clear. People warned him. Oh, absolutely. Multiple engineers, deep-sea experts, they all raised major concerns. They warned him about the experimental hull, about the complete lack of certification. And the CEO, Stockton Rush, he just dismissed it all, openly dismissed it. This is a perfect example of a dangerous disregard for established principles. Carbon fiber can develop microcracks. It suffers from fatigue in ways that steel and titanium just don't under that kind of crushing, squeezing pressure. It wasn't designed for it, not for repeated dives to that depth. Nah. And their last communication, it was totally routine, completely normal. They said they were dropping descent weights to adjust their position. 6 seconds after that, automatic ping was sent, and then nothing, silence. Later, acoustic data from the Navy picked up what they called a brief violent sound at that exact moment. The implosion, a catastrophic hull failure. And unlike the 3 days the S4 crew had, this happened in milliseconds. The ocean gave absolutely no warning and zero time to react. When you look at all of this, the whole century, the one constant is that zero-tolerance policy of the deep sea. That's the through line. Zero tolerance for the Tang's flawed torpedo, zero tolerance for the storm that doomed the S4, and zero tolerance for the sheer hubris of using an uncertified, untested material like on the Titan. The specific risks change from a simple collision to a nuclear threat to a battery fire, but the outcome, the result of failure is always the same. It's total. The deep ocean punishes every single error equally. It really is a humbling set of stories. You see this unbelievable selfless bravery, like Seaman Preman in shutting down that reactor, literally saving the world at the cost of his own life. And you see that right alongside this profound corporate hubris, the decision to just ignore expert warnings, which led directly to the Titan disaster. Few ends of the human spectrum, really. So what does this all mean? The drive to go deeper, for tourism, for science, for resources, it's only speeding up. It's just not going to stop. Not at all. And we've now seen almost every type of failure you can imagine. Structural, mechanical, human error, energy source. So with development moving so fast, and maybe safety checks not keeping up, which of these lessons from the last 100 years, which one are we most likely to forget next? That's the vital question we want to leave you with.